All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Wilbur. Welcome everybody to your first Budget Advisory Commission meeting of 2021. As we've seen and here's Miss Brawley. As we've seen from the last 24 hours, the hangover of 2020 is still with us. The times have not changed just because the date has. So at this point, I'd like to officially call our meeting to order. I will be running the meeting today as Chair Rodriguez is not available to join us. And I'm going to start the meeting with just a land acknowledgement. We are all blessed to live, work, and play in the unceded territories of the Dena'ina people, and no greater reminder of that than being able to look out our window and seeing how beautiful it is, and also just our awesome opportunity to be together as a group, and to enjoy the gurgly sounds of past Chair Claudia's baby in the background. So with that, I'd like to ask staff to take us through our roll call.
All right, I will do that. Jonathan King?
Oh, definitely here.
Right on. This is for the record so that people, when we're recording it, they know who's speaking. Anna Brawley.
Hi, I'm here.
Lindsay Hobson.
Present.
Tasha Hodge.
Here.
Lindy Keller. Nolan Clouda.
I'm here.
Carla McConnell.
I'm here.
Jimmy Miner. James Smallwood.
Here.
And Mr. Vice Chair, before we get going, I will let you know that I did receive an email earlier today letting me know that Lindy had an opportunity to move with a friend, and she's moved to Southern California, so she's not going to be, she had to resign from the Budget Advisory Commission, so we'll be looking to fill her seat and the other vacancy that we have, but I just wanted to let the other members know that I'm just notified. So we'll be looking for a replacement for Lindy's seat.
All right. Well, and we have, I don't think we have anything to vote on today, but did we reach quorum?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. And I do want to note that that school board member Marcette just joined the party here. So before moving into and calling for the approval of the agenda, as Lance noted, we have the departure of Ms. Kelleher for warmer climates. But we also, I believe that this is the first meeting for new members, Anna Brawley and Mr. James Smallwood. And so I'm going to start with James Smallwood and ask you, James, to just introduce yourself to the group and just tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll do the same for Ms. Brawley.
Sure. James Smallwood. Been somewhat of a lifelong resident here in Alaska, in the Anchorage, and been active in the community for a little bit. And this is something that Forrest asked me if I wanted to be a part of. And from everything talking with Lance yesterday, it's something I'm definitely excited to learning a little bit more about, and understanding how budgets are made within this within the municipality. So it's a great opportunity to be part of this.
Thank you, and welcome to the team, Ms. Brawley.
Chairman King, this is Carla, and I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any way they can turn their camera on so we can see the? I know James, but I haven't met Anna. Is there any way we can see the face while they're talking?
Yeah. Anna, would you, when you join, would you turn your camera on so that we can see you?
Sure. And actually, I do have my camera on. Maybe if you stop sharing the screen for a second, it might reset the.
We can see you.
We came up as you spoke.
Okay. So hi, my name is Anna Brawley, and I'm really excited to be a part of this board. And I know some of you, and I'm looking forward to getting to know the rest of you. So I am a senior associate with Acknowledgement Consulting. So we're based in Anchorage and have an office in Boise as well. And I've lived here about almost 10 years now. I moved up here actually to work for Acknowledgement. And I've been involved a lot in my community council, both Spenard and Turnagain when I lived in those areas. And so that's kind of my main involvement with the city, but have been kind of more involved in policy issues and have been an interloper in a few of these meetings recently, kind of following the progress of the alcohol tax, both the getting it in place and then where the revenue was going to go. So yeah, I'm really excited, and I guess we met with Lance yesterday to do orientation, and he had mentioned, why were you interested in this board, or were you voluntold to be on it? And I actually applied for it because I'm just really interested in learning how things work. And so one of those is learning how the muni budget works, how public finance works, and just kind of building my skill area there. So anyway, so I'm glad to be on board.
Well, welcome to both new members, and I think you'll find that we actually we have a lot of fun, and we get the opportunity to learn a lot. So that is one of the cool things about being here. So now we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Shortly before the meeting, Lance indicated that he wanted to move the BAC action plan from this meeting to the February meeting, and so. Lance, can I just sort of announce that we want to remove that item and then ask for an approval of the agenda, or do I need a motion to remove that from the agenda?
I would just ask that we move it to an informational item under 6C. That's all. And if there's no objections to that, that would be great. Okay.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda with the action that the item 5 gets moved to informational item. It would become 6D on the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda with the suggested movement of the action item to information item.
Thank you very much. Tasha, can I have a second?
This is Anna. I'll second.
Thank you. Any opposition? Okay, so we are now have approved the agenda, and that moves us right to 6A, which is the assembly report, which I believe will be handled by Member LaFrance.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for your service on this commission. Welcome to the new members. I'm looking forward to working with all of you in 2021. We do have an assembly meeting this coming Tuesday, the 12th, and there are a number of GO bonds being introduced, which I see actually you have an update later on your agenda. So I won't go into those. I will note that we've got some changes proposed to Title 28, which is election code. That's item 13A. And I just wanted to note that these are mostly minor changes and clarifications. Every year after the regular election is certified, the clerk's office begins work on just making any improvements, taking public feedback that was received, any questions, and works with Assembly Council, as well as the Muni Attorney and the Elections Commission. And so for the past 8 months or so, they've been making some changes and clarifications. There are things as simple as word changes instead of a return envelope. I think it's going to be called a secrecy sleeve. They're not going to call them accessible vote centers anymore. They're just vote centers. So things like that. And one item that's gotten some attention is that there's a proposal to add to the code to make clear that the clerk is tasked with investigating any, I should not use the word investigation, but looking into any possible instances of suspected or alleged voter fraud. And that's a function that the clerk has always had, the clerk's office, but it's just being stated in the code. And Title 28, is it's very big, and not all the sections are being edited in the ordinance that's before us, and that ordinance is like 33 pages. So some of the sections, like for example, that specifically direct like how the clerk, for example, determines if someone is qualified to run for office. There's been some concern from members of the public that this could mean digging up dirt on people, but what that actually means, and it's stated in Title 28, that you need to verify that person is, for example, a registered voter or lives in the district. So those are the kinds of things when we talk about qualifications. And elections offenses as well as prohibitions are also listed in Title 28. And so those are the kinds of things that the clerk is tasked with looking into. And then there are a couple other items of note on the agenda, but I think Cameron Perez-Verdia is on here, and he's a co-sponsor of the government to government relations AO between the MOA and Native Village of Eklutna, and he may want to talk to that. And I know that this isn't on, I don't see it on the agenda for this meeting, so I believe it comes up on the 26th, but there were a couple members who were further exploring ways to fund body cameras instead of just, putting it on the bond under a leasing program. I don't know if actually technically it's a bond. Lance, you'd be able to clarify that piece, but I know there are different approaches being considered. So I'll stop there if anyone has any questions, but I do think Cameron is on. Thought I saw him.
Yep. Well, I'm here, and I can just speak very, very briefly. Yeah, the work to develop a formal relationship and process of working together between the municipality of Anchorage and the Eklutna tribe is on the agenda coming forward, and I'm one of the co-sponsors of that. I'm very excited about it. I think it really sets a model for how municipalities and tribes can develop formal working relationships that will not only be a recognition of the sovereignty of those tribes, but will economically improve our city. I think there's a lot of we've spent the last 7 or 8 months working on this, and we've looked at examples across the country how these kind of agreements can really benefit cities and municipalities. So we're excited about that and excited to have that conversation. The second item that Suzanne mentioned, I'm working with a couple of members on this as well, and just looking to explore if it's possible to be able to fund internally the needed technology of the Anchorage Police Department that includes body cameras. The technology, there's no doubt, is needed. It's just a matter of how we do it. And so I think we're just exploring the pros and cons of putting it out for a vote versus identifying internal funding sources to be able to fund it. And so that will be a discussion coming forward as well.
All right. Well, thank you to both of the assembly members for the update. Any questions from commission members? All right. Well, hearing none, it sounds like our assembly members are off of the hot seat. And now we'll be moving on to the Anchorage School District report. Take it away, Mr. Ratliff.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if I can share my. I'm going to share my screen here. Can you guys see this?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go over our general fund projections for our revenue and expenditures and fund balance as we knew it back in a few weeks ago. We presented this to the school board in the second meeting in December, but I wanted to share it with you guys just to give you an update of where we're at for our fiscal year 2021, and then we'll give you a brief update on what our process is for the rest of this year in preparing our FY22 budget. So what you're looking at now, this is our projection for revenue for FY21, and then it's kind of going down. I want to highlight some of the kind of outlying items that you'll see as we go through it. Property taxes, we anticipate not being able to collect a little over $2 million of local property taxes into our general fund, and that's due to the limitation, due to the drop in enrollment. We receive less state funding, and therefore we can't collect as much property taxes as we had expected. So you'll see that down in the state sources too, a $10 million drop in enrollment or in revenue, solely based on just the OASIS count that occurred in October. So those numbers are pretty, I think those numbers will be accurate. The expenditure numbers, those are the ones that are going to be a little bit harder to pin down, but the revenue, it's a little bit easier at this point. Student fees, we anticipate being about 1.3 million under what we had projected. It's mostly as a result of lower students or fewer students participating in sports, not having parking permit fees for the first semester and probably up until the fourth quarter if we were able to open back up then. So all these user fees that we generally would collect, we're not being able to do that now. Interest earnings remain volatile. You know, as the market kind of goes up and down, we're on a mark-to-market approach with our investments. So it's that's kind of hit and miss at this point. We think we're going to be lower as the federal funds rate has trickled down from when we built our budget from about, I don't want to say it was like 1.5% or so down to 0.25%. So that's one thing we've got to keep our eye on. E-rate should come in about where we expect. And then the other local revenues, you see it's 8.3 million or 8.9 million below what our budget was. But of that 8.9 million, 8.3 million of that is related to our usage of fund balance, which we don't actually book as an actual in our projection. So that's about a $600,000 variance in the end. The other losses are related to reduced facility rental fees. We usually generate some income by renting out our facilities, our gyms and multi-purpose rooms and classrooms to outside groups. But as COVID has hit us, that's really not been a revenue generator for this year. Other kind of notable items, our federal impact aid is going to be down, is pretty close to where we anticipate, although we haven't got the final allocation from the state yet, so we don't exactly know what the feds are going to push out to us. And there's some bills that went through Congress that are going to help out with providing more federal impact aid money to us, but we're really not sure what that is. Medicaid, it's about 300,000 or so projected to be lower than what we had budgeted, about 37% drop. That's a pretty substantial decrease, not in terms of overall dollars, but a percentage. And largely that's going to be due to, you know, we generate Medicaid money based on services we provide to students. And as we have fewer students and fewer opportunities to provide those services, we're going to get less revenue from those. We've also included some money in here. We have about 600,000 overall for FEMA related recoveries from the earthquake. So as we can bill out some of our repaired services to FEMA, we anticipate getting some of that money back. Are there any questions over our revenue sources before I go forward?
Can I ask a question? This is James Smallwood.
Of course.
So you just said that for other local revenues, you said that was just gyms and rental. Was there anything else that's included in the local revenue?
There's a handful of things like transcript fees, some training fees. Some of these like really small dollar items are included in there, but that big drop is because we just don't book an $8.3 million usage of fund balance. So anytime we decide to use fund balance as part of our budget, we budget for it, but we don't actually book it. We just anticipate that coming out of our saving or our fund balance at the end of the year. But about, most of the loss was, the rest of the loss related to that facilities rentals and us not being able to rent out those facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nolan, it looks like you might have a question.
Yeah, and I think my daughter might too. So on the foundation funding from the state, it's obviously based on the base student allocation and then the estimate of average daily membership, right? How do we know? I mean, there's been a lot of variation in that, I thought, because of some people opting for homeschool or leaving one school district or one or another for one reason. So how do you is there a lot of wiggle room in that estimate of what the ADM is going to be? Like how do we know what it's going to look like given all the variables right now?
For purposes of FY21, it's we've already conducted the count, so we're fairly confident in our assessment of how much funding we're actually going to get this year. Going forward to FY22, that's where it becomes the issue, as we know all these students went out to correspondence schools, whether they're district correspondence schools or statewide correspondence schools that aren't part of ASD, went to private schools. Some moved out to or stayed out in Matsu, some of the students who were coming in. So that's, really that's going to be very hard for us to project how many students might be coming back. We're anticipating, I think, in our pro forma budget that we presented to you, we had about 75% of the loss coming back in neighborhood schools. So how that really materializes, we'll have to keep a close eye on that. And, as we move forward, keep trying to survey parents and that have left the districts or gone to alternative programs, that hopefully we can get a better handle on what that actual number is going to be. Because right now, we've contacted our demographers and other folks who have their kind of fingers on the pulse of the economy, and no one's got that great of an answer for us. So we're just going to move forward with a fairly, the projection is, I guess, as good as we know it at the time, and hope a lot of the students come back once classes are in person.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up quickly.
Please.
It's because I had seen at the state level that the foundation funding for education coming from the state to all the districts is down quite a bit, and that is based on different estimates of ADM. And so I had been wondering just how that might work, how that might play into it. Is that foundation funding number this year is it seems like it's down a bit, because I wonder about the situation where we estimate low or the state estimates low and then you end up with more students, and how that might get resolved. But I don't know if that's a realistic concern or not.
Right, and for the state foundation, they're going to fund us based on our ADM and what's in statute. For the foundation funding, at least, even if they don't have the money appropriated, they're going to pay out the districts. For this year, they said, when we talked to the state, they said they were, I want to say it was like 26 million more than what they had anticipated. And by and large, it's because of the districts that, like us, that dropped a lot of enrollment, but then we claimed the hold harmless provision. But those students also went to statewide correspondence, so they're having to pay out that money to these other programs. So they're actually paying out more than what they had anticipated for this year, but they're not going to try to prorate out that difference between what they budgeted and what the actual cost is to the districts. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is Star, if I can just add something. We had requested that they hold us harmless, or that they have the state let us use our account for last year, but that's not the case. So what we turned in October, it looks like that will be our funding for this next year. I think, if I'm correct, we lost about 4,000 students, Andy?
Yeah, I believe so. At least within the neighborhood schools. It might be more than that in the neighborhood that had some added back to our correspondence programs. But it's so the state will fund us based on our actuals, and going forward, we projected to the state, because they asked for our projections in early November, we projected that about 75% returning into our neighborhood classrooms, and then a little bit of a drop in our correspondence. But they'll pay us out either way, and we'll be able to claim some hold harmless next year at the same rate that we're or at a 50% rate instead of the 75% rate that we're claiming this year.
All right, proceed, Mr. Ratliff.
Okay, so scrolling down, we'll kind of go through some of the highlighted areas of our expenditures. I think the biggest thing to kind of couch this in when you're looking at it is we have about 200, or at the time we had about 245 FTE in our general fund that were unfilled. So we have a lot of positions that we've held vacant to try to make up for that. Go back up here, this $23 million shortfall in revenue, and with about 8.3 million of this 23 million was planned, but majority of it was not. So we're trying to make up that shortfall as we go through, which I think so far we're doing a pretty good job. Like I said, we got 245 FTE that we've held open. Some of them we are trying to fill, some of them I don't think we are. But the ones we are trying to fill are hard to fill positions that we are always trying to fill, and they're generally going to have some vacancy factor in there. But for the most part, district admin, professional and clerical funds, that's 2 to 3% is generally what we see as a kind of an attrition factor within those areas. So that's not too outside of the normal. The teachers' assistants, that's about 2.4 million under budget, which is also fairly close to historical averages. And these include predominantly the special education teachers' assistants, which have always proven hard to fill. Where it kind of gets a little different, though, is whenever we change, or whenever we can't fill these teachers' assistants, we hire clerical substitutes to come in and do that. So, and that's in this extra help budget. So as these positions, normally we would see these positions unfilled and then see this line here for the added duty extra help, we'd see that over budget. And we'd end up transferring money from the teachers' assistants in there to cover the shortfall. But what we're seeing now is, since we haven't been in class, we haven't been hiring those clerical substitutes, so we are seeing some savings in there. And that's the same with our regular substitute teachers here. So far, we've gotten much fewer substitutes than we have in any normal semester. But going into next semester, or I guess this semester now, whenever we open classes back up to in person, that's going to be a pretty volatile area. So we don't really have a good handle on what people's behavior are going to be and how many substitutes we're actually going to need once school starts back up, particularly once we get past the K-1-2 opening and if it goes towards higher grades. Our certificated folks, that's about in line with what we'd expect. The principals are a little over budget, partly because we had a couple of principals that we retained on staff to do some things for us, and also because of the unsettled contract, some of those costs have rolled in there. Operations and maintenance is a little bit, they're usually under budget. It's a little bit over now, mostly because we had settled those contracts after we prepared our budget and just kind of the cost of doing business there. You can see we have we're expecting about $6.1 million in general attrition, leaving us with about 2.8 million under budget for all our salaries and wages, about 0.8% unspent. Benefits largely track whatever our salaries are, with the exception of medical, which the savings on medical is is a lot due to these unfilled positions, but a lot when folks waive insurance, we don't pay into their health care. And we try to account for that by having this, you see this $18 million benefit attrition factor. That's why it's so large, is almost all of it's this medical. Then PERS and TERS and other benefits are probably going to track pretty close to what we expect the overall salary projection to be, or the same percentage anyway. Other items, utilities, we're expecting to be a little bit under budget there. The same with travel registration. Of course, we're not going anywhere, so we've saved quite a bit of money there. And then our other items are indirect costs, and then unallocated, you see this unallocated line item of $19 million. Most of the money that's sitting in unallocated, it's not going to be spent out of there. It's encumbered, and predominantly it's encumbered by charter schools, and that's how they roll forward their unspent balances that were required to allow them to in statute. The $300,000 that's hanging out there is money that we've recovered from, I believe it was middle school education, because they've stopped charging sports fees and they came up with a way. So we'll just they came up with a way to offset their revenue line by fewer expenditures. So we recouped that money, and we'll just hold that and let it drop back into fund balance. But aside from that, everything else is looking pretty good and in line with our general projections. We're looking to be about 10.4 million or so under budget in our expenditure side, or about 1.5%. So frankly, I think the school district's doing a pretty good job keeping all that in line and making sure that our fund balance isn't going to drop too far due to this extreme drop in revenue. Are there any questions on the expenditure side as we go along?
Andy, this is Jonathan. I'm just wondering if you might be able to, under the benefits with the medical. I understood your explanation that you guys budget the 99, and that it seems to me is like that's the budget if people were to take insurance but in reality what ends up happening is that there's some people that don't take insurance, and so you end up actually spending a little bit less, and you use the benefit attrition line as kind of a non-cash line to account for that. I guess my question is, if people decided that they wanted the insurance or they couldn't, or their spouse couldn't get it and they came on, clearly that benefit attrition line would shrink. But would the total cash that the school district have to consider paying out go up? I mean, is there a cash effect there?
Yes, and it's partly depends on what plan they're in. So if they're in a teacher, the teachers union has their own plan through the Public Education Health Trust. Mm-hmm. So if they have more members electing to take their insurance, then you'd see the actual cost, or the actual projected cost, go up here. This 82 million would increase. So we budget, so everyone, like you said, can take medical if they choose to, right? We're not shorting anybody's budget, but we're making the assumption that not everybody's going to take it, just based on historical amounts of folks who just haven't done it. So we do estimate, a pretty big chunk of folks aren't going to do it. But, if everyone decided to take insurance and my cost increased by $15 or $16 million, then it would be a little bit of a worse situation here. So that's kind of, but we also don't want to, and we use these estimates because we don't want to have a lot of money left over at the end of the year. We want to spend the money that we're getting from the taxpayers and spend it on education. So we do try to get as much as we can pushed out to the schools. So by putting this minus $18 million here, we can add $18 million in other places in the budget. Just pretty much projecting that that's going to go unspent throughout the year.
Okay, so you're essentially using that like a vacancy factor for positions. But the challenge there, of course, is if there were a shift, that there would be a cash impact on classrooms.
Certainly, yeah, there very well could be an impact to the bottom line of the district when more people would take insurance than what we've projected. So,
all right. Thanks for spending a little extra time.
Yeah, at the same token, if more people waive insurance because their spouses have it, then we save money like we have this year.
Right. So. Any other questions on this sheet before Mr. Ratliff moves on? Not hearing any. Push forward.
All right. So this is a summary of where we expect our fund balance to end with after we account for the information we presented on revenue and expenditures. So we started the year with $30 million in unassigned fund balance, which is pretty much spendable on whatever the board can agree to spend it on. The bond rating is about 25 million. And for those of you new to this who haven't seen it, the bond rating is to, we've set aside, it's based on 10% of the property taxes we expect to receive for the calendar year. And it's set aside so our bond rating agencies will give us a better bond rating essentially. And then we have the 8.3 million of subsequent years expenditures, which is the fund balance approved for usage in FY21. And these are the state categories that they allow us to, that they calculate the cap on how much money we can carry over. So they have like undesignated and designated categories. Designated categories would be things like our reserve for impact aid, encumbrances, self-insurance, things like that. But overall, our revenue and our revenues are expected to be under our expenditures by about almost $14 million at this point. Considering our revenue is down $23 million, this isn't really that bad. So we're projecting our undesignated fund balance to be ending around $51 million. As far as the percentage of fund balance calculation, the state cap is based on a percentage. You can only carry over up to 10% of undesignated fund balance as divided into your total expenditures. So let me divide the 51 million into the 621.7 million here. It gets to about 8.2%. For reference, so each percent is about $6 million. At the end of FY20, we were about I want to say 10.3 or 10.4%, and the state gave us, all the districts, a waiver to carry over fund balance above the 10% at that time. So we were able to, in FY20, carry over more than what the state had generally allowed. But after this year and the enrollment declines and cost of COVID things, that's expected to get down to about 8.2%. The other thing kind of thrown a wrench in here is our student nutrition fund is expected to have just this semester about a $6 or $7 million deficit. And then we expect it to keep creeping up through the rest of the school year. As schools open, we'll be able to make some more money, but we continue to serve meals and continue to have these staff. But we're generating only about 10% of the revenue that we would normally generate from those meals. So if we have to fund about a $10 million student nutrition deficit, that brings our fund balance percentage down to about 6.6%.
Right. Star, it seems like you've taken yourself off mute. Did you have, you want to chime in here?
Oh, no, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I do, when Andy's through, I just have a couple of things I want to add.
All right, thank you.
That's really all I have as far as the projections go. And I don't know if Star wants to speak before we go into kind of the next steps of our FY22 budget, but that would be my next item.
All right, so let me ask any questions on this page for the assembly, the commission members? Okay.
This is Anna. Actually, I have a question.
Go ahead, Anna.
And maybe it's not specific to this page, but it's related. I was just curious. I mean, I know enrollment's down, and I know some of that's due to COVID. I was just curious if you guys have any sense of, is it mostly older kids? Is it mostly younger kids? Is it people leaving the state? I'm just curious, like, if you have kind of I'm sure you don't do exit interviews, but what that looks like.
It seems to be the biggest drop were in elementary schools, but I mean, we lost students all across the board. It seems high schools probably lost the fewest students, but everyone was down except for our correspondence programs, the charter schools, Family and Frontier, and our own statewide program, Paideia, all increased enrollment significantly. We ended up we did a budget adjustment back in, I think it was December, and we pushed over about $10 million into those programs, or at least Family and Frontier, into the charter schools that they were due by statute. But we have done, they've compiled where the students have gone via records requests, so we can tell where they went just based on when they come in and do the records request. But a lot of them have been going to private school, a lot of them into the statewide correspondence, and then some of them have been going back out to Matsu.
Okay, thanks.
Star, is now the best time to have you pop in, or you want to wait until Andy covers his coverage of the next year's budget? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm going to let him go ahead and then I'll chime in.
All right. Proceed on.
All right. So our next steps are, right now we're in the process of creating our preliminary FY22 budget to submit to the school board. We anticipate having that ready for them by the end of January, and then they'll be able to review it for the month of February before we're required to give it to the assembly by the first Monday in March. So that's kind of our timeline. You know, for those of you who weren't here in December that didn't hear the presentation, we're estimating, you know, $28 to $38 million budget deficit for FY22 based on projected enrollment and not having a big use of fund balance to throw towards it like we did this year. And then some other outlying costs coming in from, you know, we set up a one-to-one program for students so they could all have students that needed it could have a device. And we have to have IT staff to support that. So there's these other ancillary costs that are coming in that make up that deficit. As you might recall, we put 30 health teachers into our CARES grant for FY21, and we anticipate those needing to move into the general fund for FY22, as far as just to keep things looking the same way as they did. So that's kind of what causes the deficit. But right now we're working on balancing that budget and seeing what other revenue sources may be available with the new CARES 2 money or whatever I don't know what the name of the bill was that Congress just recently passed that will provide more funding to education. So we're working with the state to see what our amount of that money would be, and then the allowable usages of that money as we're trying to build out our budget to see, hopefully we can retain as much staff as possible and make some targeted improvements in our district.
Okay.
That's our path forward at this point. So if there's any questions on our progress, let me know.
And Jonathan, I thought, if that's okay, I thought I'd just add a little bit of an update of what's going on with the school start.
Yeah, please, Member Marcet. I think people would really be interested in that.
Okay, first of all, I just wanted to start off with the COVID vaccine. We are starting yesterday afternoon administering vaccinations to phase 1A tier 3, which is nurses, select SPED staff. And then I believe next week we'll be starting with phase 1B tier 1, which is the 65 and older. Last time I checked, there were some appointments available on the 14th, but those may be gone. We're giving out approximately 2,000 vaccines over the next 1.5 weeks. I think Andy touched on this a little bit. Oh, the other thing I wanted to tell you is COVID testing. So we're going to have testing capacity is going to be increased. So we're going to offer symptomatic testing is going to be offered at 11 of our schools. Asymptomatic testing is going to be offered from 11 through the 15th of January for all school staff and students before they return to school, if they'd like to take that opportunity. And then I think Andy touched a little bit on the FY21 COVID-19 relief funding. You talked about that a little bit, didn't you, Andy?
The new COVID funding that we got, and we're really not sure as to the amount of the usages on that yet. But it should be similar to, at least similar uses as the first round of CARES money. Yeah,
so we're excited about that, but also hesitant as to how we'll be able to use that. So the other thing, school start, which I know has been on everybody's minds, we are starting school on January the 19th unless the municipality or the state puts forth some emergency order. That's going to be pre-K through 2, K through 6 self-contained special needs program. The Whaley School will begin in-person school for 5.5 hours each day. Grades 3 through 6 will continue with online and Zoom classes. However, there may be concessions for our combo classrooms. Instead of splitting them up, we will let our 3rd graders that are in combo with our 2nd graders come back if they so desire. And again, this is definitely up to the parents and students. If they want to return, we're not forcing anyone to return to in-person learning. Also on January 19th, we'll begin select students who need extra support. We'll begin in-person small group classes for 5.5 hours each day. That would be our middle and high school students. And they are going, I believe it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then Wednesday is going to be online. We are looking hopefully to start the rest of our students, high school and middle school, during the fourth quarter. Depending on how things go. We'll be watching the success of our K through 2 returning and assessing when we'll start our 3 to 6. Preschool, just so everyone knows, it's going to be 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Elementary will be 9:30 to 3. Middle school will be 8:45 to 2:15. High school will be 8 a.m. to 1:30. Are there any questions?
All right, this is Carla. I do have hopefully a semi-quick question. One of the questions I have, and it's just kind of a sidebar, I meant to ask last month. The school board had voted to change the name of East High School to Betty Davis High School. Very worthy of the honor she is. But I'm wondering what proposed cost that was to make that change. What the school board presented as a cost, for the bottom line cost for that. And then I also would like to know if ASD, in your opinion, what ASD is also doing. Andy does a great job at explaining all the different lines of the budget. But what are some of the things that ASD is also looking at that we didn't hear about to try to bridge this gap and save a little money?
So some of the things, one thing that we have prioritized is our board goals and guardrails, and that's going to be our focus on the budget, which will be reading, math, and career, college, and technical ready students, high school students. So that's where we're going to focus our budget and our spending on. In those guardrails, it talks about diversity. So we'll be looking at ways to increase student groups and programs that have not necessarily been successful in bringing those students in. We definitely want to lower the achievement gap, and so things we're looking at how to hire diversity within our classrooms and our school districts. So those are things that we've been targeting with our new equity director, Sonia Hunt. Those will be the things. Mental health is also included in there. So those are the things that we're going to be focusing our spending on. Anything else as a board, I'm hoping that we are under the same consensus that we are going to support our goals and guardrails. One of the things, health nurses, and I'm not sure where this is going to stand, but health nurses and our Ignite program were things that we were redesigning, not getting rid of, but redesigning for cost effectiveness. Those were voted in for a 1-year contingency only, and we used our COVID funding for the health nurses. So that is funds that we don't have this year. That'll be something we take a look at. But basically what we're prepared to do is have the district present us with the budget with their recommendations. If the board feels that those are not recommendations that support our goals and guardrails, we will send it back to the district and ask them to come back with something that supports what the board supports. And based on that, what we're trying to avoid is any line item discussions. We are not the experts in putting this budget together. If we don't like it, we can send it back and give our opinion, but we want the school district to come to us with the solution.
And Ms. Marcette, do you have any, to Carla's first question about the East High School, do you have any color on that?
Actually, I don't know if Andy, if you have the number on that. One of the things we saved is an amendment had been proposed that anything athletic, our teams and that sort of thing, keep their mascot. So it would be East High School Thunderbirds. and Betty Davis's name would not be, we wouldn't be changing our mascot or our uniforms or anything like that. So that does save us some money. There is going to be the cost, of course, of stationery, the signage on the building. I think it'll be minimum, but I can't remember if we actually got a dollar amount on that. Andy, do you have that?
I don't believe we actually provided a dollar amount. I didn't see one, or really even know, how much signage is going to be, or how many signs they actually have.
Yeah.
But as like Star alluded to with the uniforms, I think those may be changed or as they age out, because we keep these uniforms around for several years. Football jerseys last a while, so as new ones are going to be ordered, they may take that opportunity to change it or something. But we don't.
Okay.
There'll be some staff time spent. My staff will have to go in and spend some time adjusting all our accounting systems to reflect the name change, but it's not going to be actual dollars out the door.
Yeah, and I see Tosh had her hand up, and I'm sorry that I interrupted that flow. The reason I asked that question is because, as many of you know, in San Francisco, they were kind of going through this, let's change the name. And the mayor, of course, came forward and said, let's not talk about these other things until you figure out how to get these schools open and get them open right. And I'm just surprised that the school board was focusing on other things besides what had to be done this year to get the schools open and get them open safely. Just my personal opinion, and I'm surprised that you guys didn't have to put forward how much it would cost to make that name change also. So thank you for your answer, your candid answer.
Yeah, and I think this had been on the back burner for over a year. We needed to just address it and move on. And so that's what we did. It wasn't something that took up a lot of time. The other thing is we were told the cost would be minimal because we're not replacing uniforms and those sort of things. But I tell you what, the next meeting we'll make sure we have a dollar amount for you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carla. Tasha, you've got your hand up. Fire away.
Thank you. First, I want to thank Star for being here. I appreciate you making time to answer our questions. And you might know this, might not, but I work for ANTHC, so I regularly get tested for COVID, and that's been, I think, a concern for a lot of folks as the schools reopen, if there's a process in place for staff to be tested versus if people have symptoms. I think we've seen a lot of asymptomatic tests showing up positive. And if you look at the COVID dashboard for Anchorage, earlier this fall, we were doing thousands of tests a day, and now it's like under 200. It's ridiculous. And I don't know if that's because people already have COVID and can't go get tested for another 6 weeks or what's going on there. But I feel like we're opening up the school to those that are experiencing the most challenges with home learning, and maybe hard to get tested themselves, as we look at special needs students and kids, preschool age children. If there are additional protections that ASD has put in place or has discussed, or if you guys have decided that not to impose like a mandatory testing, I'm interested to know if you guys even had that conversation.
We have had that conversation on mandatory testing. I don't believe, as a school district, I think we did run this by our legal staff. I don't think we can mandate mandatory testing. We have it available, asymptomatic and symptoms available through 11 schools, and also they can continue to get testing through municipality sites at no cost. So I think we've put something out there that affords our students and teachers, staff to be tested whenever they feel they need to. We do have mitigation in place that will be checking for children with symptoms, with colds, that sort of thing. And if any, I mean, we have so many things in place to watch our students as they come in, if they're sick, if they're running a fever, or if they have a cold, or if they're sniffling. I think we'll be probably over reactive in that sense, just to keep anything from happening. But we do have the availability for teachers, students, and staff to be tested if they so desire.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Tasha.
All right. Anything else for our school board guests and school district guests before we roll on to OMB? All right. Hearing none, it sounds like we're on to the. Thank you so much, Andy and Star, and thank you for all your hard work this year. To know that this is this school year has not been the year that any of us thought it would be. So now on to the OMB presentation, 2021 bond preparation update, and some first quarter budget revisions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we go on to that, as Andy and the school board are working to get the school district's budget together, I think I heard Andy say that they're going to be spending this month finalizing their FY22 budget and then having the board consider it in February prior to the submission to the assembly on Monday, March 1st. I would just put a tickler in your guys' ear if our next month's meeting is booked with other topics other than the school district at this time. So if the BAC wants to take a position once the district has a chance to formulate their budget proposal and make a recommendation or review prior to the assembly action, we ought to be thinking about maybe a special work session in a February timeframe. So I'm just put that out there now, Mr. Chairman, and just ask the rest of you to consider it, and we'll follow up. I would just ask Andy, would that make sense time-wise for you, Andy, to have a work session maybe separate on the school district's budget in the February timeframe?
Yeah, that would be good. We anticipate introducing it on the February 2nd to the school board, and then the vote, I believe, is going to be on the 16th for the final vote, and then it'll go to the muni after that. So,
okay.
Depending on
and realize that the board may send it back, and there may be a special meeting. We were hoping to get it end of January, but I don't think that's going to happen.
And the reason I bring it up now is by the time the district submits the budget to the municipality or to the assembly, really the assembly's role is to approve or not. The assembly does not have the ability to make recommendations. Frankly, they can't make changes to programs, whether it's labor, non-labor. So the assembly's role in the budgeting process is basically review and approval of what the district's presented. So if you, Andy, or the school board would like any insight from the Budget Advisory Commission, I would just ask you to start thinking about the timing of when the BAC would provide some thoughts. And Andy, I'll leave that to you, and you and I can find some time knowing that it's going to be in February.
Right, yeah, and that's it. You know, if you guys wanted to get it early enough to provide feedback back to the school board before they vote on it on the 16th, we can certainly have it that week, even the first or second week of February. But we could also have it that third or fourth week too, after the school board's approved it, before the assembly's seen it.
Okay. I'll reconnect with Andy, and then we'll get back with you, Mr. Chairman, and the rest of the BAC.
All right. Sounds like we're ready for that sounds like a good plan. And we're going to move on to the OMB presentation. Assembly member LaFrance had to drop off, so we want to make sure that we acknowledge and thank her for her contributions today. And take it away, Lance.
All right, thank you. So as Assembly member LaFrance mentioned, the 2021 bond ballot propositions are going to get introduced to the Assembly next Tuesday night. The Assembly will hold a public hearing on the bonds on the 26th. That is the last day in which any ballot proposition that's going to go on the April ballot or the April election has to be approved. I'll remind all the BAC and for the new members, the bonds are based on the capital improvement budget that was approved by the Assembly. And I know that I spent some time with the Budget Advisory Commission talking about what the capital program was for general government. Again, this is for general government, general obligation bonds that will go on the April ballot. It doesn't include anything for the utilities. But what I did want to mention here, a couple things. One is there have been some changes after the Assembly approved the CIB. And frankly, at the time, when the Assembly reviewed the capital improvement budget prior to their approval, the Assembly added a capital project onto the program that the Budget Advisory Commission did not see. And that was they added a project to identify a location and build a public restroom. And the targeted area, I think the intention was someplace in the downtown area. So Assemblymember Constant, with the support of the Assembly, added some money. I think they added $250,000 to do build a public restroom downtown. At that time, there was some additional work that needed to be identified about what would be the annual cost of operation and maintenance. And so we've done some changes that. So the administration supported including that on the bond. So we'll have 6 ballot propositions. The facilities one will include public restrooms downtown. I can send, or I will send a link to the ballot propositions. I'll just maybe highlight a couple of them a little bit more for you. One is for the fire department. The couple projects that the BAC approved, one is for a ladder truck and the other is for some facilities. That did not change at all. The parks bond did not change at all. The road bond changed slightly it added about $900,000 for bonding for some heavy equipment, graders, street sweepers. I think it's mostly heavy equipment. We have bonded for that equipment in the past. That was added to the road bond. It would be for the ARTSA. The other thing that is new, when the Budget Advisory Commission saw the capital budget, it did not include a police bond. Last year, we had a police bond to buy fleet. The administration decided to add a police bond to this year's capital program. Similarly, for fleet, so that will be presented to the Assembly. And they have not, they're aware that we're going to be doing it, but it will be the first time that they'll have seen that proposal. And then we had a couple tweaks to the facilities, and one of them was we had a project in Girdwood that the Girdwood Board of Supervisors wanted to make some improvements to the Glacier Valley City Hall Little Bears facility. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors decided they did not want to do that, and they requested the administration take it off the bond. So that request came in after the Assembly had already approved the capital program. So the administration is going to honor the Girdwood's request, and they are going to take it off. We're going to recommend taking it off. We'll have to get the Assembly's approval to do that. So we will not see that bond project. That was about $2 million. And what they did want is Girdwood Fire Station has a rescue truck. It is the primary vehicle used to respond to accidents on Tourniquet Arm. It's really used for basically supporting of the emergency medical services. The original piece of equipment, I think, is 20 or 21 years old. It was bought with a federal grant. Since it was determined that that is an area-wide service, they asked the administration if we could add that to the area-wide public safety, which is similarly the bonds that we have ambulances. So we did do that. And that's primarily the changes that were added. We added public restrooms. We removed Glacier Valley. We added this rescue unit, and then we added an APD bond. So I will send you guys a summary sheet, and I have, the Assembly has scheduled a work session next Friday, the 15th, and I will be giving a presentation to them on the bonds. Frankly, it's going to look very similar to the bond presentation I gave to BAC with just some highlight of the changes I just verbalized. So if you have any questions or you want a little bit more detail, I will let you know. So are there any questions of you, Mr. Chairman, or members of the commission?
Yeah, I'll open it up to any questions. I will say that I am as someone who grew up in rural Vermont, I'm all for getting everything we can out of a piece of equipment. But at 21 years, I would say that that piece is probably fully depreciated, and probably time to get some new equipment down in Girdwood. So, any other comments, peanut gallery comments, or substantive questions from the group?
Okay.
Right.
The next item I have is we're working on the schedule for the first quarter budget revisions. I met with my team yesterday for about an hour just to lay down kind of the schedule. I was hoping that I would be able to share that with you today, but I have not had a chance to share it with the administration, and I need to do that first. There will be no need for me to wait till next month, but as soon as I get their review, I will send it to you. As a reminder, while we did approve the 21 budget in November, as we are now into January and the year is closing, we will get revised projections from Treasury on all of our revenues. We will also have the year-end expense of all of the departments. So far, it's going to be very close, I think. And then we make adjustments to the 21 budget, and then we set the mill rate, and that is an action that will be moving forward that will ultimately get approved in April. The general calendar is for the month of sometime in the next couple of weeks, the mayor will send out guidance to directors. We'll see if we had any significant changes or unknowns. We've obviously made more progress on where we are with the CARES Act funds, moving those funds into first responder payroll. We have lots of programs that we've committed to. We want to make sure that those continue and that are budgeted appropriately. All of that as part of our first quarter schedule. The Budget Advisory Commission, I would suspect that in March, possibly early April, you guys will get a chance to look at the recommendation from the administration on what that looks like and what the pieces are going to look like. So that will be probably depending on the level of changes that the administration is proposing, that would probably dictate the amount of time that we're able to spend. But I would plan on that being a topic at least in your March 4th meeting. But schedule coming forth, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions for Lance or staff on that point? All right. We've reached the point in our agenda for audience participation. Is there any members of the audience that would like to make public comment or address the commission? All right, not hearing any. One of the things that when Chair Rodriguez and I and staff sat down and talked about this upcoming year, and one of the things that we wanted for this upcoming year is we wanted to give the commission more time to just chat. And so we have about 20 minutes left here in the schedule for people to ask questions or express ideas, or even just comment on things that they're seeing around the city that are of note to them. And I'd like to just open this up at this point, given that this is the first time, and I did not know until about a half an hour before we took the meeting that I would be leading this today. I just like to ask people, what are they seeing? What are they hearing? What's on the top of their mind? And I just ask one of our commission members to just be brave and start us off with thoughts that they're having or stuff they're saying. I see that Tasha has raised her hand. Go ahead.
Okay, so something that I've been hearing a lot lately is in respect to the COVID funding that we received, that we have allocated it for, I think, pre-existing issues rather than COVID-related stuff, and that we should not have maybe let people use the honor system for self-quarantining if they had COVID. That providing resources with that money would have maybe been something that would have slowed the spread better than closing the city down. So just a thought, things I've heard.
All right, I like that. Anybody want to build on that? I'll build there. I've been thinking about that as well. And I think that the Muni made a play, right, to solve long-term issues, and as opposed to perhaps using quite as much of that money for COVID-related relief. And I think one of the things as we go through these experiences and we acknowledge, like, we maybe would have used that money a little bit differently. And I would say I've heard the same thing, and I think there's some really strong validity to it. That we could have done some things a little bit differently, and if we are to get another tranche of money, then I think we need to really stay focused on the challenge that's in front of us and the points of our community that are being challenged by this by this particular event. Anybody else want to chime in on that or any other point?
This is Lindsay. I guess I'm not really following. So that the comment is that perhaps CARES Act funding should have been used to facilitate quarantines versus the honor system. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so Tasha, you want to pop back on and just give us a little more color?
Well, I know a number of people who've had COVID. I know people who've passed away. I had COVID. My entire family got it in November. And I'll tell you, it was really hard to stay home, even thinking of easy things that I could afford to do, like going and getting groceries versus having them delivered, or just things to like get out of the house. And then people that I knew had COVID, I frequently saw them posting on Facebook that the different things that they had done, whereas people who maybe have a different financial situation, like I have a cousin that's chosen to be homeless and is currently housed downtown at one of the hotels there. He was quarantined in his room, and I feel like the honor system really helped spread COVID because there was no one making sure that I was staying in my room, if you will. And I'll say me because I don't want to throw anyone under a bus, although I think I did a really good job of staying at home. But I'll just say it was really challenging, and I know that those that feel the challenge usually don't obey the rules if there's no one enforcing them, kind of like any other rule.
Okay. Lindsay, you want to pop back on as that advances your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely explains that. I guess I'm just curious how CARES Act funding would be used to, like, perhaps there'd be a monitor, or I was just wondering how CARES Act funding would be used to improve that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is that money could have been used to improve enforcement. I also, my brother is currently under quarantine. My brother's a San Francisco police officer, and he's currently under quarantine because he was spent time with a suspect on Sunday night that extended period that turned out to be COVID positive, and the city is paying for him to be quarantined from his family, putting him up in they've actually rented a hotel for the time. So I like this. Anybody else? People hearing things about CARES Act funding, COVID response, anything else in that area? And Natasha just posted a message that says there are some companies that paid for their employees to be quarantined in hotels. Yes, Anna, pop in.
Sure. So it's not specifically CARES Act, but I know one concern that I have, and I've heard from other people working in the field of homelessness response, is just that, for the first time in 2020, the city really invested heavily in shelter, and some of that was out of necessity, and some of it was maybe finally meeting some of the need that we already had. And so if that money goes away, and I know we're still, it's unclear what other federal funds will come in, but I am still thinking about kind of what the munis fundamental obligation or long-term commitment is going to be to shelter, and then of course what that looks like during COVID and what it can look like afterwards. So that's kind of one thing. The other one is I'm just concerned about this new variant being super transmissible. So it's like we stepped in one direction when we have the vaccine out there, and now we it's like the counterforce almost. So that anyway, that's just something on my mind as well.
Okay, that's great. Anybody else want to chime in there? Things you're hearing? I'll put out one. I actually, you guys know that I coach, and traditionally since COVID started, I coach via Zoom or Teams or whatever platform. And I do have a client downtown that works for a downtown agency that does not really have access to Zoom because he's in facilities maintenance. So he's my one in-person client, and we sit on either ends of a very big conference room. But my wife works downtown, and I walked. She dropped me off and then went to her office, and then I walked down there. And I don't know if people have spent time downtown, but the changes in downtown are becoming quite apparent and stark and not surprising in terms of space available and those sorts of things. And so I am thinking long term, just as Anna was saying, what is the city's commitment to shelter for homeless? I am personally asking a similar question. What is the city's commitment to a vibrant downtown? Because we've had a downtown that has struggled over the last 5 years, and even before that, and it is going to need some level of reinvestment to draw people downtown. And I think we do have an opportunity actually to create a downtown where people are living and working, not just working. So that is something that is on my mind, particularly any time that I venture into that downtown core. We will benefit from a strong downtown core, and it's taken a gut punch right now. All right, and Anna notes that we do have two commercial centers downtown and Midtown. And it is very difficult of a city of our size to sustain two of them. It is a split differential. All right. Any other items that people want to talk about?
Tasha.
Come on, Tasha.
So I think most of us are on social media, and I've seen a list circulating of businesses that have been closing in 2020. And it reminds me of a conversation that I had with folks. For those of you who don't know, I live in Mountain View. And so our close mall was Northway Mall, and then we got the Glen Square, and then over in Muldoon, they built Tacotnu. And I feel like we're not properly kind of like the two kind of business districts, not thinking about like, in a city this size with malls that close, like we don't have, I think, the population to sustain it. And so, it's tough. Do we reinvest in existing things or invest in new development? And I feel like I see a lot of empty spaces everywhere right now because we have put a lot of money into helping people develop new projects and new malls, and it's discouraging to see just the empty spaces or the tries that people have of putting something in a location and then hip-hopping it over to the newest place every opportunity that something comes open.
And those are good comments, and particularly when you think about the effect of online shopping and how much money. I mean, I watch I sit in my front window essentially every day with my desk, and I watch FedEx and UPS and the Postal Service go by many, many times a day delivering boxes. And most of that is money that could be spent here, but requires a little more effort. So maybe perhaps for staff and something to carry back to the chair is we are hearing, some concern from the commission around long-term plans and around some land use stuff. And I'm not sure that I have ever seen in my time on the commission have us spend any time with, say, the planning department or some of the economic development departments. And I think as we get into the mayoral change in particular, and those new department heads are identified, that perhaps the commission for maybe it's a Q3 meeting asks people to come on in and give us their vision for the city when we have those new department and quasi-private corporation heads come in. I see Nolan is typing. Yes, Nolan.
Yeah, that's I love that idea, Jonathan. I think that's a really good idea. I'd love to see. So obviously, economic development's what my passion is. But another point I just wanted to add is that the kind of an item of interest. The Department of Labor just put out like minutes ago the population estimates for the state and in migration, out migration, and Anchorage lost about 5,600 people to out migration in the last year. So. Kind of some continued bad trends there. The state as a whole lost about 8,800 people.
Yeah. So okay. So we have someone's leaving, and it was great to see everybody. All right. So I think we're moving towards closure here. Great comments, Nolan. Anything else for the good of the order before we move into wrapping up the meeting?
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman, on the action plan, just to let you know that we moved it down. I'm going to ask Lila. One of the things that we talked about last month is, and one of the things I think most of the BAC members enjoyed was the department deep dives. And so to get that process going a little bit earlier, as you wanted to do, I'm going to ask Lila to send out a survey, and I'm going to ask each of you to select 3 departments that you would like to review in 2021. And then at the end, the reason I'm asking you to do 3 is that I'm going to try and give everybody their top 2 as much as I can. So look forward for a survey from her. For the new members, I talked to Anna and James a little bit about that process. So, and then in February, what I'd like to do is sort of solidify that list and hopefully maybe get that ball rolling at our earliest opportunity. And then if you have other key issues that you would like to address, I think what are we doing about homelessness and the key to the downtown? If there are other topics that you would like to talk about, please either add that to a notes section or send that to me separately. And I will include that in my summary for the plan, and we'll get that to you before the meeting so that you can act on it in February. So our February meeting is going to be, I'll leave it at that, and then we'll talk about our next scheduled meetings. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So our next scheduled meetings are February 4th, March 4th, and April Fool's Day, April 1. I want to just take the opportunity here to say thank you to each of you for your service on the commission and for the non-commission members that are still online. I think that we saw yesterday as a nation that there are a strong civil society is really important, and your participation on this commission and in investment in Anchorage is one of those foundational things that is really critical to a strong civil society. So I just want to personally thank everybody for being here, and welcome to our new members. It's nice to be near full strength, and it's nice to have new members as always. So with that, and thank you, Nolan. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
And a second.
Second.
There we have.
Thank you, Tasha. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Carla and Tasha and Nolan. And thank you to staff, as always, for making it possible for us to have this meeting. If there is no objection, and hearing none, we are adjourned, everybody. Stay safe, have a great month, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.